Let's start this out pretty good. So let me get my little cheat sheet out. So tell us a little bit more about yourself.
Yeah, sure. So hi everyone, my name is Bram. I'm a co-founder of a company called FiveCrowd. So basically I was always sort of a corporate marketer. I worked in packaged goods for a while, noticed that there was an opportunity in the market and decided to start FiveCrowd. We bootstrapped the company, we were revenue funded. We ran it for about 2.5 to 3 years, and as of this week we were acquired. So it's a good time.
So we'll definitely dive into that in the next little bit, but so tell us a little bit more about how you came up with the idea of creating your platform, or even creating FiveCrowd.
Yeah, FiveCrowd. So basically where it came from was a pain point that I felt as a brand manager, and what's happening right now in marketing as I really like the pitch by Max, where we have this proliferation of channels, and we no longer have just Facebook profile, but marketers have to create more content more often across more channels. It's no longer just a TV and print ad. Everybody sees your ad and everyone's happy. Still have to do that, but now you also have to change that into a banner ad and make that 3 sizes and A/B test that and customize it to each of your retailers and put it in French in Quebec and on mobile, and it just keeps on going on. Blog posts, social content, infographics. So the problem in the industry was that my traditional Madison Avenue advertising agency was great for the creative and strategic idea. They were sort of my architect, but what I needed more was construction workers. I needed really scalable, efficient production for this long tail of just tactical projects. I know there's a lot of folks that sort of mentioned they're in technology and marketing, and so hopefully you guys sort of get that. And so the idea behind FiveCrowd was to do that at scale, to do production efficiently, and basically do all the unsexy tactical stuff, never win awards, but build a business doing that.
So doing all the nitty gritty stuff and all the, your I guess the foot into the trenches and really start producing stuff. So how did you come up with creating your early team? So it was you and a co-founder, or?
Yeah, so it's a business partner that I actually worked with for about 10 years prior to starting the company. And that's something that I think is really important. I have great admiration for entrepreneurs that go at it solo. I don't think I could do it because it's such a crazy roller coaster of highs and lows. And what I sort of found was that having someone that you can count on and trust in the highs is amazing, and in the lows it's amazing, because what people don't talk about is the other side of entrepreneurship. And for everyone who's starting a company, I'd love to try to convince you not to do it because it doesn't make for a good story in the news of an entrepreneur who's totally failed. But if you look at the stats, that is the majority of the situations. And when you're alone at night in your car crying, or in the shower thinking what am I going to do for 3 hours? That's the reality of it. But there's also the highs. And so what I found with having a business partner is that in the lows, there's someone who can pick you back up and get you back on your feet. And in the highs, there's also someone that you can privately celebrate with, because they understand the blood, sweat, and tears. So we'd worked together a lot in the past.
So when it comes down to the teamwork, when you first started off, how did you break up the tasks to say, okay, I'll be responsible for this, you'll be responsible for that? So what's the dynamics when you first started that?
Yeah, so a lot of co-founders have complementary skill sets. Maybe one person takes care of the financials, or one person is technical. We actually have very similar backgrounds and profiles, but I'd say we have very complementary working styles. A lot more introverted, she's more extroverted. The way that we divided it was actually a little bit different. And I was more working on the business, and she was more working in the business. So she was running operations in the day-to-day, and then I've sort of acted as a consultant to the business wherever we needed the help, kind of pivoting around. So that seemed to work for us.
So more of an operational, or more of a?
Yeah, I know. I mean, I've done everything from
legal.
Yeah. I think half your job description goes out of the door the first day anyway, and that's something I tell everyone who's joining the company. But even as the founder, you have to be prepared to do everything, even the menial, tedious stuff. I get enjoyment out of that, though.
No problem. So tell me, what's the vision, or why FiveCrowd? What's the?
Yeah, well, so basically, marketers have always ever had 4 options. So you can call your advertising agency, but for this type of work, they're slow and expensive. You can hire a full-time employee, but work demands are ebbing and flowing across skill sets and seasonality. And the best example of that is if I told you we had a webmaster. Probably tech people here, you guys would probably laugh at me. Who is a webmaster? But that's also a brand new word in the English dictionary. So brand new, totally antiquated. But I don't need a webmaster. I need a UX person, I need a front-end designer, I need a developer, I need a back-end person. You need 10 people to do a website correctly. So hiring an employee doesn't always work. You can hire freelancers, and that's what we do, and it's a great option, but it's a lot to manage. If you're doing a video, you might need a copywriter to write the script, a voiceover, a sound engineer, an animator. All of a sudden, managing payment and compliance is a big thing. Or their fourth option, which is what I just did most of the time, is you just don't do the project. And that's kind of what I found was happening a lot, is people had great ideas for test and learns and innovation, and then they go, shucks, it's prohibitively slow and expensive to do it, so we're not going to do it. So we wanted to be that fifth option, and we thought we could do that through crowdsourcing.
Oh, fantastic. So tell us a little more about your system. So you do the freelancing, you have that system of freelancers working under you. What's the whole process of you maybe onboard the freelancers? How do you build up that from nothing to something?
Your last point is a really good point, because I think there's two types of growth as a company and as an entrepreneur. There's binary 0 to 1, where you literally have nothing and you have to build something out of it. That's hard growth. That's what you got to do in the first year. Building on top of something's a little bit easier. So specifically how our system works, you can sort of think of it as taking a vendor management system and combining it with Slack. So it's a 360-degree solution for taking freelance professionals, bringing them onto a platform in a compliant way with a full digital audit trail. We have a matching algorithm that connects them with new opportunities, and then we jump into a workroom that facilitates project collaboration all the way through to payment.
Okay, cool. So tell us a little more about the system itself. So let's say, okay, you have this idea of creating this freelance system. Now you have to create your own solution. So what was the process of even creating your own MVP for yourselves and then for your customers?
So we're two non-technical co-founders that are trying to build a tech company. So we went through a very different process. One of the things that we did that was really different from a lot of tech companies is our go-to-market strategy was to launch a service business. So we're revenue funded. We bootstrapped the whole thing, and what it did was it sort of gave us a couple things. One, it got us in front of customers early on, which validated a lot of the thinking that we were doing. And customers are great because they're sympathetic to a young company, but they're not going to buy from you if it doesn't make sense. It also gave us some volume that we could then use to get the other side of our marketplace going. So we're also a two-sided marketplace. On the one side, we work with big Fortune 500s. We actually work with Microsoft. We work with Johnson & Johnson, Labatt, Twitter, Hershey's, Pepsi, TELUS, growing list, and they basically call us for that marketing production. So we're on our third version of our platform, and the first one was very chicken scratch. The second one was sort of a Frankenstein, a third-party software connected through a whole bunch of like deep API integrations and libraries. But our third version is full custom, and what that allowed us to do when we brought on more of the development team was point to an existing solution that's currently working and have a really tight brief for our roadmap. Okay.
So you're talking about, you're bringing freelancers in. What was the process of bringing the freelancers, like marketing yourself to them to say, you got to come to me because of, and then how do you onboard the customers to say, we have all this, this slew of talent that can actually get your products done?
So it was a disaster. Like we did it totally wrong. We spent the first couple weeks and we brought on 100 great freelancers, and we had no work for them. And then
come and go.
We were like, that was not good. And what we realized right then and there is we actually had to build a company around the freelancer. That the idea there is, if we can get the best talent, it makes our life so easy, the customers are going to follow, right? So what it means is we don't charge them any fees. We send them bottom of the sales funnel leads on big brand work that's going to happen. We actually send them a calendar invite automatically on the day they're going to get paid. So it's like payment to Brian for this project, Where, PayPal. We just make their lives really, really easy. And we kind of built like the best party online for freelancers. Once we did that and promised them steady flow, we've been able to grow both sides of our platform where we now work with freelancers in over 150 cities around the world.
Okay, now when you're bringing these people on to say, I have this fantastic work for you to work on, what was the process of bringing on these customers to say, you know what, I got these phenomenal people going, okay, maybe I don't, but how do you sell that to onboard all your customers then?
So I don't know if it didn't sound like anyone was working on an enterprise-based sales company, but if you are, that's a very long process. I like to say it's like from here to the CN Tower, and by the time you get across the street, your contact is either like left the company, doing their MBA, on vacation, in a new role. So just navigating through that, we've had some customers that the sales process has been over a year. to get going. So there's some clever ways to like hack that and get things done faster. If you call something a like beta, test and learn, or a pilot project, you're more likely to just get going. We had some customers that actually paid us on credit card for the first little bit.
Yeah.
But one of the things that we did was we focused on taking a lot of the work that the other agencies didn't want to take on, so small little projects here and there, and that allowed us to one, get some projects coming in for our freelancers, get some revenue, but it also gave us a foot in the door and some case studies that we could then convert into larger projects.
Okay, so you found your little niche. That's how you're able to maximize or get your foot in the door.
Yeah, we sort of stayed hidden from the corporate immune system as long as we could.
So that's been kind of cool because you guys have been like the secret sauce or that little. No one really knows about you, but you're there.
Yeah, and once you have that momentum in an enterprise, the thing that makes the sales cycle hard starts working in your favor because people move from one company to another all the time, and they don't forget what happened in the last company.
Yeah.
So if you were a key to them looking really good in front of their boss or something else, those customers will bring you with them to the new places that they go.
Relationships. So tell us a little bit more about the process. It's how many years old? It's
we're like 34 months.
Okay.
Yeah.
Through that process, what was the process of actually bringing out more talent internally to build your team or your company? So you have your freelancers. How did you build your company? Say, okay, we're getting the work in, we're getting stuff in. I guess I bring developers and people. How did you manage that and manage the relationships and the culture and everything?
I like to compare it actually, Brian, to the way I used to hire people in my corporate job. So in my corporate job, I would contact my dedicated HR associate and say, hey, I got approved headcount for this role. They would go, are you okay if we post this job description? We've ironed it out over the past 75 years. How does it look? And say, yeah, looks great. Let's post it. 3,000 people apply. They, whittle that down to 30, phone screen them. I have an interview with a couple people. Say, I like that person, and I'm kind of involved, but more or less 2 weeks later, that person's sitting next to me with like a nameplate and computer and everything's good to go. Yeah. And as any entrepreneur knows, it's not at all the way it works in a startup. We kind of realized, hey, maybe we can afford to hire someone. I don't know. We wrote up a job description. We thought it was probably wrong. We posted online. Nobody applies. We start to convince people to interview with us. Eventually, we finally get someone to like agree to join our team. It was just me and my co-founder. And then I was like, oh my God, I got to set up a payroll system. I got to write an offer letter. Like all these things you don't think about. But if you want a capability, you have to sort of create it from scratch.
Absolutely.
So it was a lot of work, but it just gets easier and easier and easier.
Okay, and it's a process of scaling. So you bring the people on, but then there's the other worry about making sure you hit the payroll. You got your jobs, you got everything going on. Yeah. You're growing your team, you're growing everything internally, so there's internal costs. Yeah,
the best advice I got on running a business was from a mentor of mine who said that revenue is vanity, just a vanity metric. Yeah. Profit's sanity, it's where you kind of make sense of how you did, but cash flow is your reality. And so
that's fantastic.
You have to watch cash flow because if you get, one thing that happened with us actually was our revenue, we were really lucky. We had some really good traction early on. Our revenue was going up and up and up, and I always managed a P&L in my corporate life, so I was like, hey, everything's great. And my cash balance was going down and down and down because we had to pay our freelancers and our big corporate companies. They don't pay us right away. No. So that was a really big learning early on for us.
Oh my God. Yeah, I've been in that industry for a number of years, so I know the whole process. So as you're growing this, I mean, here's the biggest challenge you have, especially in a marketing company dealing with freelancers, is how do you vet the people coming in to make sure they are who they say they are? If you're going to give them work, make sure you get quality work so it doesn't damage your brand.
Yeah, and that's a huge challenge with freelance is how do you know what you're going to get, right? Especially if you're working with multiple freelancers. Yeah. Some of it is our secret sauce, but what we basically did is we have a stage for the onboarding and vetting process. So every freelancer is sort of a row in the table, and they go from left to right. So it starts off, they fill out their profile, they do an ID verification, they sign an NDA, they do an interview, they do a pilot project. They sort of keep on going until they finally get through, and not everybody makes it through that process. But once they are, we have enough information that our matching algorithm is able to put them with the right project. So we'll sort of crunch through everyone and say, okay, Brian should get this project because he's worked on this brand before, but Bram's done this project type. So we try to give people the right projects for them to succeed. And over time, as we progressively profile you and figure out what you're good at, and sort of like Uber or Airbnb with ratings and reviews, the good talent starts to bubble to the top and gets more work.
But again, that takes time before you develop features.
And so the first 200 days were a little crazy.
Just hacking things.
Sort of a blur. I don't really remember a lot of it. Yeah.
So, I mean, through this whole process, what have you learned that was the most important thing for yourself? Like, my God, if I can say one thing and teach people don't do what I did, what would that one thing be?
I don't know. I mean, I think there's been so many things. One thing I definitely would have done differently is gotten started earlier on a lot of just the operational weeds. So I remember we sent off our first invoice, and it was about a week into the company. We did a really quick project for a customer, and I called my brand new accountant and said, like, hey, anything I should know? Just want to be like a responsible business owner. And he said, well, do you have an HST number yet? And I said, no, I don't. He's like, well, you don't need to worry about it, but I would just call CRA and get one. Yeah. So I waited for like 45 minutes, CRA number, and I'm like, hi, it's Bram. I'd like an HST number. And they're like, sorry, like, who is this? What business is this? What's your business number? Yeah. I'm like, oh, I don't have one of those. And they're like, well, you need one of those. So
it's the early stuff.
So then I was like, oh, okay, can I get a business number? And then they said, oh, sure, like, what's your incorporation number? I'm like, oh, we're still working on that. And then they're like, well, you need that. So I said, okay, is there any way I can do that faster? Yeah. And they said, well, just call a lawyer. So I called a couple lawyers, I got in touch with someone later that afternoon, said, hey, I want to incorporate a company, I want to get this done fast, anything I need to know. I said, whoa, if you want to incorporate a company, we better talk about getting a shareholders agreement in place. I'm thinking, I just want to send an invoice. So I think some of that stuff you can do while you're still doing something else or while you're in the early stages. And in the the first 90 days of your company, you need to be building business value. None of that builds business value. Like, you got to think that it's like set up your domain, set up the website, like download Chrome, buy a laptop. Like all these things take time, and I think it slows down.
Wow. So again, you're talking about the process of some of the pains that you guys have gone through. What are some of the biggest? Again, you're talking to a lot of people in different fields, from marketing to early stage startups. What are maybe the top 5 pieces of advice you'd be able to give people?
Well, for starters, one of the ways we're very different than like the typical startup thing, because we kind of did it backwards for most startups. Like typical startup trajectory, right, is you sort of come up with an idea, get an incubator, accelerator, get some mentors, so you have some pedigree on your website, and eventually the goal is to commercialize and get a customer. And we sort of did it the opposite, where we started off trying to get a customer and kind of worked our way backwards. And I think service is, like, for some reason, a dirty word in the startup community, and people hear the word service and they go, ooh, I don't know about that. But for us, what it's done is it's given us exposure to incredible business challenges that our clients are working on. It's allowed us to go to market, build a brand. It's allowed us to not have to raise capital from anybody, which has been amazing. And it's also, sort of course corrected for us, because customers are ultimately what you need to get in front of. So for the longest time, that was huge, and it's informed our roadmap so that what a typical tech company does is, at least the pessimistic view, is sort of hack, pivot. We built a product. Do you have a problem that this solves? It's called a use case, and you get product market fit and launch it. And I think we've done it a little bit differently, where our product's moving on a very straight line, because we're doing it based on what we're hearing from customers. So even if you're thinking about launching a pure play like product tech company, I'd actually think about starting it off as a service business, and it's sort of the Y Combinator Paul Graham advice of doing things that don't scale, but it's not a bad idea.
Okay. Now, normally I jump in and talk a little bit about, what's your 5-year plan with the recent acquisition. What can you say? I mean, what do you see yourself right now? What's happening with FivePro?
Yeah, we're super excited about it. Yeah. So the company that bought us is called SGS. They're backed by Onyx, which is the largest private equity company in Canada. They're in 24 countries. They actually have 50 on-site customer locations, where there's a person with a badge who's sort of part of the organization. So that's a huge competitive advantage for us. I mean, we're now a global business, which is so exciting. We've always been that on the freelance side, but it now means that we can truly offer the full breadth of services and products to our customers. The other thing is that their core business, and we were chatting about this, Brian, with your background, is actually in pre-press, so they have a lot of the assets and files for their customers, and that's something that is enormously valuable for a production company like us. So we're not sure where everything's going to go, and I'm not sure how much I can share, but it's super exciting. Like for the team, it's great. For our customers, it's great. And for our freelancers, it's going to mean a lot more work. Yeah, well, that's fantastic. I'm definitely interested in finding out a little bit more when we get the press release, and so we can actually share it with everybody. Now, with all this being said, we definitely want to open up to everybody here. So who has any questions, and one question to answer right now?
Feel free. There you go.
What was it?
Oh man, it didn't have a title. It was sort of like
I need you. Just come.
yeah, just sort of help. But you know, I think early on you need Jacks and Jills of all trades, just generalists who will get their hands dirty, not ask any questions, and do a little bit of everything. It was a painful transition for us to move from those generalists to specialists as the company grew. So, you know, I think if I could do it over again, I'd have a better eye to where those folks could end up and try and find people a bit more adaptable. But yeah, like early on, I didn't hire for a position. I hired my friend Jesse because he was the guy who could help me.
Yeah. See, it's kind of strange. I mean, being in the creative field, you normally get people to sign up to do your creative briefs, so you know exactly what you need. But when it's asking yourself what you need, sitting down as a team, like, oh my God, I need somebody, I don't know what.
Yeah,
there's so much.
Yeah, you know, it's sort of the shoemaker's kids
Absolutely.
doing their shoes. I mean, we didn't have a website for the first 5 months. Like that was another thing. We were very choiceful and not sort of chasing some of those like signs of success as a company, but just getting heads down and doing it until the AP department at a large Fortune 500 called us and said, like, are you guys even a real company? And so I put up a website, and one of my favorite things to do now is to go back to that. There's a website that lets you like go back and see your website in time and take snapshots. It was like a disaster. It made no sense. I think it was, I don't even want to say what it was.
That'd be a good Christmas party. Here's before and afters as we started growing. Oh, no,
but yeah, we've had 4 websites, right? So we've really iterated as we've learned from our customers.
Yeah. Fantastic. Any other questions going through? Yep, perfect.
Sort of how much business you were able to take on before you actually had an HST, or before you were able to incorporate the company officially?
Oh, we did it basically right away. Yeah, and I would advise to get all that stuff done even like before starting your company if you can. Yeah, I don't think what we did made sense.
Perfect.
So I was working at Joyce, which had a marketplace as a product, and one of the challenges that we faced was that you kind of want to have feedback loops in the system, so you're weeding out underperforming suppliers or people on the demand side. What was the feedback loop like for FiveCrowd, and how did that evolve over time?
Yeah, that's a big question. So the question was just on feedback loops. They're so important because it's basically the big advantage that a product business has is quality control, right? You can sort of productize something and it's the same experience every time. Coming from packaged goods, I mean, that was awesome. You actually have control over your product, but in a service you don't. And the best example of that is anyone who's flown recently. You always watch those like beautiful videos. I always think about this and like, welcome to like this airline, and then the flight attendant is either very rude to you or very nice. But that's the service part that you can't control. So a feedback loop is kind of the best way to control it. And it's also a great way to sort of gather metadata on how you're doing. So ours is really simple. It's a 5-point review on how the freelancer did, and then they actually review us as well. And both of those feed into different things, including our matching algorithm and just our internal review process that we have. So it's nothing sophisticated or crazy. It's pretty simple, but it's powerful.
Perfect. Anyone else going around?
Here. How long did it take you to get your funding versus how hard was it to get your funds for the specific company, and how many times did you pitch that idea to that specific company or specific funder?
Yeah, so we were revenue funded.
Yeah.
Basically what that means is we didn't have any funding really. We just went in front of customers and said, this is what we want to do, like would you buy it? And that's a huge advantage that a service can do is like if you are providing something, even though it's perishable and it's not a product, you can actually commercialize it on day one. Like you can call up a customer and do a sales call. We heard a lot of no's, before hearing any yeses, but we were really fortunate to find a couple of what I call like anchor clients that really believed in us and stayed with us through the course of the entire entrepreneurial journey and are still with us. And I think we call them founding clients. That's a term that they love, and I truly sort of see them as almost like co-founders in the whole project. So my advice is just N of one or experience, but I would just get in front of customers right away, and even if you don't have something, just do it, and you'll get really good feedback. Either way, we pivoted we had like 1,000 small pivots before we got it right.
How long did it take you to deliver that essential product to that client before they say, hey, we paid you for it, you're waiting for that product or something? Did you ever receive that call or anything?
No, it was pretty fast for us. It's just the nature of the work that we do. And so we basically did one really fast, small project for a pharmaceutical company. And then we asked them a couple questions about the project. We're like, hey, like, why were you guys even doing that project? They said, oh, because we're doing all this other stuff. We said, oh, we can help you with that. And so it continued from there.
Okay. Now, to deal with the pains, just personal experience dealing with creatives, how did you go through the process when there comes to different iterations and different, you're doing all this proving over and over and minor changes, and how do you manage that whole process?
Yeah.
So basically to rope it in and say, okay, it's not going to keep on going forever.
We basically have 3 questions that we ask
Yeah.
if we're going to take on a project. The first is, do you actually, if you close your eyes, can you picture it? And if the client says no, like moms in Quebec think my brand is passé, I need some help to gain market share. We're like the wrong partner. We got asked to do a brand relaunch for a company, like that's not what we do. We do like the more prescriptive stuff. But if you say, hey, we did this thing last year, we want to update it, or this is competitive execution we like, and so if you close your eyes and picture it, we can do it. And then you basically need assets for us to work with, and you need to know what the delivery specs is.
Okay.
Once we have that, there's a level of prescriptivity where usually we've either done it or we haven't. Now, there's always that creative aesthetic, but what we found is that being a little bit more prescriptive in the upfront part of the brief has saved us downstream.
Okay, so when it came down to different versions and stuff like that, you just kept it down to a simple formula, saying maybe 1, 2, 3 max, and then
well,
that's it.
It's a good question, Brian, because one of the biggest ways that we're different is we don't have billable hours.
Okay.
So and most service companies do that, and what we actually did is we just do fixed price.
So your project.
So and what it really does is it aligned our incentives with customers from day one that we both want to get this done as fast as possible, like on the first try. Let's deliver. And it's kind of forced us, I think, to become really efficient in that process.
Okay, and all of your freelancers intern at the same time. This is the formula, get it in, then boom.
Yeah, so actually the way our process works is the brief goes right on the platform, it gets broken up, it gets sent out to people all around the world that are shortlisted through the algorithm. Someone could be walking, get a little buzz, like, hey, you want to work on Budweiser, really got a really cool project, you've been shortlisted because of your profile. I enter in my proposal, and within 24 hours, we've awarded it to the right person.
Okay. Well, that's pretty cool. Any other questions going around? Going once. There we go.
Can you just talk us through the acquisition process?
Oh yeah, wow. It was it's a long process. Basically, we were we had a couple shared customers, and so they had heard about us and reached out just to kind of like learn more, and that's happened quite a bit. So we didn't really think anything of it. That turned into an investment conversation, which then turned into an acquisition conversation.
Do you guys want to get acquired?
We just want to build a big business. What me and my business partner always say is we really like 3 things: fun, profit, and scale. Profit and scale are fun, and they all kind of work together. So we'd sort of done the corporate thing, we'd done the startup thing and building a real business, and we've got a pretty good team, and we're growing really, really fast. This was an opportunity with a much larger player that could bring huge resources, and we're just super philosophically aligned with them. So I think we had tried to kick off a big partnership a year prior with a larger company in Silicon Valley, and we just weren't philosophically aligned. And even if the economics work, even if like the contract makes sense, like you have to both be shooting towards the same vision, and that's what we really liked about the SGS deal.
Okay, and again, you're talking a little bit more about the acquisition, the whole process. So can you talk about more about the mechanics? So the bid comes in, someone coming and approaches you directly saying, okay, this kind of aligns with us. I know you want to scale. This is the perfect way of scaling for a service company like this. But what was that whole process? If you can talk a little bit about it. It's just like a high level.
I don't know if anyone's ever gone through it. It was a very stressful experience. But I just took it as sort of a learning opportunity. It's a much longer process than you'd think, and doing something like due diligence obviously takes a lot of time. I think it's important to keep a clean house as an entrepreneur, and that's maybe one thing that clashes with like the lean startup methodology of just like sort of fix the thing and sort of keep going. And that's one thing that I think it was probably because of our corporate background that we actually, ever since we've been, Brendan who runs operations probably gonna laugh at this, but since we started the company, since day one, we've had an Excel spreadsheet, and every single piece of hardware that we buy, we log it with the serial number and the book value and the date that we bought it. And just this kind of good practices of just like always keeping your house nice and tidy that make things like that a lot simpler. So. You've got to evidence everything, and so that's something that really, really helped. And I'd recommend just as good practice, good business practice, like keep a clean house.
Okay, Brendan, what was some of the biggest challenges that you faced when you first came on board with Upcrowd and started working with them?
Man, I didn't know I was getting interviewed too.
Hey, why not? You're here.
Should I come up? I'll just
Come on over. It's fine.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
So it was an interesting journey for me, actually. Started in a totally different career path, and then actually met Bram through George Brown College, and just transitioning from an intern into, with being a startup, so many different roles along the way, and watching the business grow and change as we went along.
Okay.
Kind of just filling the gaps where they were necessary, and then finally landing in a certain spot. That was so different than where I started. So it's it's been really cool to.
So that journey again, from seeing an early stage startup, you're seeing their continual growth. You're in the trenches right now, watching it, seeing it, experiencing, and then goes through the acquisition part. What was that experience? It's like, oh my God, we finally.
Exhilarating and terrifying, but no, it's been really cool, and I'm really happy to have gone through the whole journey into this part. It's really
for a little context, Brian. So I teach at George Brown on the side for fun, and so
fun.
It's a great way. So I think every entrepreneur needs a way to have a cathartic mental stress release. For me, that's like venting in front of a whole bunch of people as well. I like doing the same thing. And so I was teaching, and it's also a great way to get to see talent because they're sort of interviewing with you without ever knowing. And Brendan was a top student, so managed to poach him.
Fantastic. Well, we were still asking some more questions. Does anybody else here have anything before we just jump back into just standard networking, and then we can just finish up and just maybe do some prizes? Anybody else have any questions? Going once, going twice, 3 times. Fantastic. Well, thank you so much, Bram, for coming out and giving us your